I recently decided to try and play the Call of Duty games again by starting with Call of Duty Black Ops. I've only played the first two and the first Modern Warfare. In this video I will be discussing the story, scenes and environments. Needless to say, there will be spoilers ahead for everything. Let's get started. In 1943, Hitler was looking for unconventional methods to assist in the war. Dr. Friedrich Steiner focused his time on developing chemical weapons throughout the war, resulting in the creation of the biological weapon called Nova 6. In 1945, an Arctic base had been set up from where the launch of these weapons would take place, targeting Allied cities around the world. But the Allies had bombed the ship before they could proceed with the plan. Dragovich and Kravchenko arrived at the base near the end of the war in order to retrieve both Steiner and Nova 6. They wanted to make use of both for the good of the Soviet Union. After having secured Nova 6, Dragovich wanted to test the weapon and decided to do so on Reznov and his team, whom he considered a thorn in his side. During the killing of Reznov's team, an unexpected Allied assault gave Reznov a chance to escape. During the escape, he decided to use this opportunity for revenge by sinking the ship and Nova 6 with it. After having escaped, he was later captured and held at the gulag called Vorkuta. Dragovich and Kravchenko also escaped back to Russia, where they would proceed to recreate Nova 6 with Steiner and, later on, with the help of Dr. Clark. They would also train sleeper agents that would be deployed to the US, where they would wait until activated to release the Nova 6 weapons. This activation would occur when a series of numbers were broadcasted from a ship in Cuba called the Rizalka. In 1961, a CIA operation called Bay of Pigs began and a small group was sent to assassinate Fidel Castro. Even though they succeeded in the mission, the target turned out to be a double. Mason, whom you play as, ended up being captured and was handed over to Dragovich, after which he was sent to Vorkuta. Here, attempts were made to have you programmed to assassinate JF Kennedy. During this time, Reznov, who was still held in Vorkuta, was sabotaging their mission by having you reprogrammed to instead kill Dragovich, Kravchenko and Steiner. Later, an escape attempt was made by the prisoners in Vorkuta. You ended up escaping, but everyone else died, which included, unbeknownst to you, Reznov. After the US government was satisfied that you could still be trusted, you were then sent to Baikonur to eliminate the Ascension Group and Dragovich. Dragovich had escaped and you were then sent to Vietnam in 1968 to investigate the Soviet presence in the area. You retrieved a dossier that contained information on Dragovich's whereabouts. After retrieving the dossier, Mason and his group tried to track down Kravchenko, but they ended up getting captured. They eventually escaped, but Bowman died in the attempt. They finally tracked down Kravchenko and killed him, only for Woods to also die. Here, Mason discovered information leading him to his next target, Steiner, who was at Rebirth Island. During Mason's time in Vietnam, Hudson, Mason's CIA handler, was sent to Kowloon to find and interrogate Dr. Clark, the scientist working with Dragovich to help develop and stabilize Nova 6. They were ambushed during the interrogation and Dr. Clark was killed. Hudson then went to the Ural Mountains that were mentioned by Clark, which was a suspected development center for Nova 6. Here they were contacted by Steiner, who promised to reveal what the numbers mean if they rescued him at Rebirth Island. With both Mason and Hudson at Rebirth Island, Mason made his way through the docks to eventually reach Steiner and kill him. Hudson made his way through the gate to also eventually reach Steiner at the moment Mason had killed Steiner. With Steiner dead and no way to find the location of the broadcast station, and also noting that Mason shouted he was Reznov while shooting Steiner, they decided to interrogate Mason, only to discover that he was brainwashed. They pressed through the interrogation in the hopes that Mason would reveal the location of the broadcast station. They eventually succeeded in doing so and discovered the location of the station, that of an underwater facility that made use of a ship, the previously mentioned Rizalka, to allow the numbers to be broadcasted. Below, they found Dragovich and killed him. I like the way the story was told. Your character, Mason, on suspicion of being brainwashed, ended up being interrogated. Throughout the interrogation, you tell them about the things you did on various missions, which will cause a flashback that you play. In one instance, you'll recollect Reznov's story he told you while you were in Vorkuta, causing another flashback within a flashback. The idea of your character being brainwashed and you not knowing it is great. There's potential there. The problem is that in one early scene it is almost too obvious that you've been brainwashed. The scene where you meet JF Kennedy and having what appears to be hallucinations of you attempting to assassinate him. This is where I thought you were either brainwashed or controlled. Later, when your interrogators revealed to you that you were in fact brainwashed, it didn't have the impact it would have had that scene not been included. Apart from that, there were one other thing that I thought was handled poorly, that of Reznov. As mentioned previously, during your incarceration at Vorkuta, you were brainwashed to assassinate JF Kennedy, but Reznov sabotaged it by brainwashing you to instead kill Dragovich, Kravchenko and Steiner. During the escape attempt, everyone died, including Reznov, but you made it out. Throughout the game, you occasionally see Reznov helping you, causing your character to think he had made it out alive. The player isn't aware that Reznov died since it's only revealed later in the game by one of your interrogators. The problem with Reznov is how your interrogators handle the topic of him during the interrogation and Reznov's interaction with other people during missions. When you play the game and it's only you and Reznov, everything makes sense. Your character is suffering from what's called dissociative identity disorder, which is why your character sees Reznov even though he's not there. However, there were moments where Reznov was with you while other characters were present as well. It made sense why your companions would not interact with Reznov since he does not exist, but your character doesn't know that. So for all intents and purposes, Mason should have properly introduced him to your companions, but he never does. The thing is, if your character does decide to introduce him to the rest of your team, they would more than likely think your character is insane or suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. This would probably end up with you being hospitalized until you've recovered from seeing your imaginary friend. One possible way around it is to not have Reznov alongside your companions. While this would work for a while, it would eventually raise some questions as to why your character never mentions Reznov to your companions in general. Even when they talk to you over the radio and you are with him, you still don't mention him. It is a difficult thing to get right, as you have to make it look believable and reasonable as to why your character never mentions Reznov. As it stands right now, the way Reznov is handled during interactions with your companions feels wrong. There's a particular scene where you have just escaped from a collapsing tunnel with Reznov and you both standing on a cliff. Along comes a helicopter that you jump on. Your character made no pleas towards Reznov to jump, nor to your companions to help him, despite that this would be the second time where you would end up leaving him alone. Once during the escape in Vorkuta where you thought he had died, and now the second time. Your character should have at the very least shouted to him to also jump, much like he did during the escape. The other problem with Reznov is how he was handled by your interrogators. I've never had to interrogate someone who was brainwashed by one party only to be secretly brainwashed by another and then to suffer from dissociative identity disorder. So for all I know, this is how one should handle such a person during an interrogation. But your interrogators never mentioned to you that Reznov had died. Only when they release you do they tell you he had died, despite there being several moments during the interrogation where they could have mentioned it. I get why they waited. They wanted it to have an impact when it was revealed, but when they told me near the end of the game, my first reaction was to think back at the interrogation and how they almost seemed to encourage me to believe Reznov had survived the escape at Vorkuta. Replaying the game made the sections during the interrogation where it happened very awkward. Other than that, I enjoyed the story. There are a few scenes I love in the game. The first one is the Pentagon scene with you, Hudson and McNamara. The lighting, the voice acting and the facial animations are all fantastic.
It never gets old. Overwhelming, isn't it?
Not yet.
The second scene is the one where you are at Vorkuta and Reznov is telling you about the raid on the ship in the Arctic. This is a great moment of storytelling for me. I love the slow panning of the camera and the voice narration by Reznov.
It became clear we were not the only ones seeking the German weapons. The Western allies circled like vultures.
This underwater scene in Vietnam where you are swimming in order to avoid being detected is another great scene. I particularly like the underwater scenes in Vietnam. The last scene sees you wander around a facility in a dazed state is great. You see numbers floating toward you whenever there are numbers in your vision. It's a fantastic effect. Also in this final scene is the hallway where the ceiling tiles float up into the air, revealing a rocket, that of one of the Soyuz rockets, and the launch of that rocket. It also looks great. There are two environments that look fantastic. The first of these is in Baikonur. The rocket wrecks scattered around the sky, clouds, dust, all convey a feeling and look of post-apocalyptic. I, generally speaking, love post-apocalyptic settings since they convey a scene of history and mystery. The second fantastic environment is that of Resnar's recollection of the assault on the Nazi Arctic base. This scene is amazing since it gives me a feeling of an expedition in the middle of nowhere, as well as some Lovecraftian horror. It feels like you're isolated. Part of me wishes there was a game with you running an Arctic expedition with a Cthulhu theme attached to it. While I'm not a fan of Vietnam, these scenes of the black sky, floating fire particles and helicopters all in a reddish glow is great. It gives me an eerie feeling. Mount Yamato is another great scene with the snow-capped mountains and valley below. Seeing the base nestled in the valley in between the clouds and the high mountains is beautiful. Special mention to one part in Vorkuta for giving off a Stalker vibe, probably due to the digger that's in Stalker Call of Pripyat. Kowloon has a cyberpunk look to it, and Vietnam with the red and black explosions against the green backdrop looks good as well. An interesting game moment was during Mission 11, where you start off piloting a black bird. From here you use a spy camera to control a small team on the ground, telling them where to move and whom to kill. However, at some points during the control of the team, your view shifts out of the black bird, flies through the clouds and into the view of Hudson, who's part of the team, allowing you to control him during the firefight. Afterward, your view will return back to the black bird. This is a fantastic idea, and yet they only do it one more time. I wish they had expanded on this idea and made it more dynamic. The action side of things are great. I tend to focus a lot on sound and how a weapons feel when compared to the action. I also tend to love the over-the-top action with bullets and particles flying all over the place. For this reason, my favorite weapons are the Kaparas and the PM63. They are both intense and sound and feel great. I love iron sights as they give me more of the overall view, allowing me to enjoy the action more. Shotguns and sniper rifles tend to kill the action mood due to their slower firing rates. Overall, I like Call of Duty Black Ops. The environments, the action, the story are all well combined to give me a great campaign. And with all of that, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.